Good to have you with us tonight. It is Tuesday, February 17th, 2026. Fat Tuesday, as they say. And we are here for the monthly agenda-setting session of the Athens-Clarke County Mayor and Commission. We'll begin with our civility pledge provided to us by the Georgia Municipal Association. And that indicates that the way we govern ourselves is often as important as the positions we take, that our collective decisions will be better when differing views have had the opportunity to be fully vetted and considered, that all people have the right to be treated with respect, courtesy, and openness, that we value all input and we commit to conduct ourselves at all times with civility and courtesy to each other. We've got several opportunities for public input tonight, and just want to highlight those for everyone. We'll have an opportunity in just a moment on our consent agenda. We'll have a separate opportunity on each of our four items that come as recommendations from the Athens-Clarke County Planning Commission. Those are items 7 through 10. We'll hear separate public input on those. And then we will hear public input on old and new business. Those are items 11 through 20. Please note that item 17 is going to be removed from the agenda as we have to put out bids. So that's our Residential Traffic Management Program Contract Award. So 17 won't receive discussion tonight. Each opportunity for public input will be a 3-minute opportunity per individual. You do see a light in front of the clerk. It will turn green when you begin speaking, yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining, and red when your 3 minutes has concluded. And we'll thank you for your time with us tonight so that we can move on to the next speaker. As we begin our evening, the consent agenda currently is comprised of items 1 through 6, and those are the items that will be handled on our first Tuesday of March meeting with a single vote. Would any commissioner like to remove any of those items from consent for discussion? Commissioner Link?
Yeah, just number 1 for some kudos, I guess, primarily.
Any others? 1 through 6. All right, so members of the public, now is the time for public input on items 2 through 6. So would any member of the public like to speak to any of those items at this time? Just give us your name and place of residence, and if you can fill out one of the comment cards and slide it in the slot over here, that way we will know how to capture your name correctly for the record. Hey, good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Danny Coleman, and I'm up here today speaking on item number 5, approval of STOP. That is a good item to discuss, but I think it's lacking something that's very important. As you know, a lot of black men don't have the support as the women do. We are looked at as second, third, and ignored how important it is. So if there any kind of way that anyone could add the black men to this, not just women only, because we really need help. If anybody could come up with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Is there anyone else here to speak to items 2 through 6, our consent agenda this evening? All right, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and transition down to the floor so we can receive reports from Planning Director Bruce Lonnie around those 4 items that involve a Planning Commission recommendation. And with each of these items that come with a recommendation from the Planning Commission, we will receive a report with visuals from Planning Director Bruce Lonnie, and then there will be public input and then discussion by the body. All right, good to have you with us, Bruce. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
So we have 4 items coming to you from the Planning Commission from their meeting on February 5th. The first item is a special use request for 166 West Clayton Street. Give you some photographs, but the request here is for special use in the commercial downtown zone. The request is for approval to allow for a private event space to also function as a bar. And this body has seen a similar request here recently. When occupancy of a bar exceeds 100 people, then it's a special use and it needs to come to you for consideration. That's the case with this address. No changes are proposed for the interior or the exterior of the space beyond those that have already been through permit review. You'll note this is also associated with a food truck court. So here is a view of the site. The portion to the north where you see the tree cover is the food truck court. The portion extending to Clayton Street on the south is an interior event space. Both of those spaces have occupancies above 100. Both spaces have been outfitted to function as a bar, and that is the reason for the request. Future land use designation is downtown. That would not change. The zoning designation is CD. That would not change. This would just get that special use designation related to that bar occupancy. Some photographs from Clayton of the space, and then photographs from Washington looking into the space. The current operator is known as Union Fair, so that's why you see that on the fence. And then the upper left-hand corner image is inside the food truck court. The opening that you see on the left-hand side of the image takes you into the enclosed space that fronts Clayton. The structure that is kind of dark gray at the back of that image is a permanent structure that has bar facilities in it in the food truck court. Here's a site plan showing the same. The hatched area is that structure I was just noting. Planning Commission's recommendation is they found this was compatible with our comprehensive plan, the stated goals of encouraging business in downtown, preservation and adaptive reuse of a historic structure, certainly prioritizes infill and redevelopment of that space, and creates a publicly accessible gathering space. We've certainly heard interest in this community for a food truck court in the downtown. They found that it was compatible with the future land use map, zoning map, and associated ordinances, and that the special use criteria have been satisfied, so they recommended approval.
All right, thank you, Bruce, I appreciate it. All right, is any member of the public here to speak to this special use request tonight? All right, and see, this is in District 4, which is Commissioner Wright's district. She's not with us tonight, but be interested in input from any other members of the body.
All right here, Mayor.
Yeah.
Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I mean, Commissioner Wright and I had some discussion about these items, and, yeah, I mean, the Planning Commission had a unanimous decision on this. It makes sense. It's good to see that empty lot getting some use and more opportunities for outdoor dining.
All right.
This
All right.
one,
Yeah.
finally, a food court downtown. I think we've been discussing this for at least 10, 15 years, so hopefully this gets approved and we can move forward.
The food truck revolution will not be televised, it will be live. All right. All right, we're going to move on to number 8.
All right. This item is also a special use request. This is for 458 East Clayton Street, the other side of downtown. This request is to allow for a special use in the commercial downtown zone, and the applicant is requesting approval to allow for multifamily residential on the ground floor of a commercially zoned structure, along with a variance accompanying this request to decrease the minimum allowed commercial space on a ground floor from 50% to 11%. No changes are proposed to the exterior, and the interior changes will need to be reviewed through our plans review process, but that's not really germane to this request. This is focusing on the special use itself. So here's an aerial view of the property, extending from Clayton at the top to Broad at the bottom of the image. The building's interesting because it does extend as a through lot from one street frontage to the other, But there is a topographical change in there, and so that you have some floor splits within the space, and that's part of the reason for this request. Future land use designation is downtown. Zoning designation is commercial downtown with the east downtown overlay. The special use request is really all that's under consideration. So here's a view from Clayton. Part of this request is to allow for the front storefront there that you see that's taking over most of that ground floor. That's the 11% of commercial that the applicant is seeking to continue to use. Code calls for 50%. And so the purpose of that designation and that 50% percentage is to keep the ground floor animated. The applicant is looking to try to meet the spirit of that standard with the 11% that fronts onto Clayton, but then to use the balance as the building shifts and drops in topography for residential use. Some more views of that block face, just to give you context. And then here's the view from Broad, with the neighboring property to the right being the bank. So the floor plans here, we have at the top image, that's the second floor. The applicant had come through a process a few years ago to convert that floor to residential use, which you see depicted there. The next level, the first floor plan, is something that is a conversion that they're looking to do. And then on the right-hand side, which is the East Clayton side, you see that commercial area that's being left as a leasable tenant space. And then there's the Broad Street level that has the egress for the residential. And this is how that space, the proposal would work out for interior breakdown of the proposed residential. That variance request to reduce the minimum allowed commercial space to 11% was heard by the Planning Commission, and their recommendation overall was for support of that request. They did find that it was in keeping with the comprehensive plan's intents, and approval of the requested variance was recommended. So the Planning Commission's overall recommendation for the application is approval, found it to be compatible with the comprehensive plan. The allowance for residential units in this building, in this portion of the building, in this location, helps with sort of a nodal area that I think incorporating some residential would be appropriate, is how the Planning Commission considered it. Special use criteria were also found to be satisfied, and so their recommendation was for approval of the request with the variance.
All right. Is there any member of the public who'd like to speak to 458 Clayton Street? Good evening.
So I'm Brett Thurman, 330 Research Drive, Athens. I represent the owner, the Debris Company. I just want to go back to some history on this, just to give everybody some basis of what went on. The property's been there a long time. The last commercial tenant was on the Clayton Street side was Junkman's daughter. So you know how long they've been gone from that building. They moved down to the bus station before Chuck's Fish came in there. So it's been a while. At that time, our owner attempted to lease the whole space commercially, and he wasn't being successful at it for a couple of years. And so he was talking about it to David Matheny one day, and David says, well, you can convert this to residential, and then you can leave your downstairs commercial. And so everybody thought that was a great idea, and so that's what happened. We developed the upstairs completely commercial by extending the mezzanine, and then on the downstairs floor, we put an apartment in the very back, and left the rest of it commercial because our client fully intended to lease that commercially. And so those apartments were constructed roughly 2016. Ever since that time, he's been attempting to lease this space commercially, and there are a number of contributing factors. The fact that it's on that end of downtown hurts it a little bit, even though that end of downtown is beginning to enliven some more. It has hurt it in the past. Also, the fact that the building construction is of a certain size, and everybody that were coming in to look at this lease space and consider it kept saying, well, the ceiling is too low. My ceiling will be too low in this space. And that was a that was a major contributing factor. I mean, when you have two bars look at a space and they won't go in there, you got a space that's not going to be rentable commercially. So that's what's driven this, and we wanted to keep the spirit of the commercial in the front so that we showed a commercial front. The building was designed as a commercial front, and we're not changing that at all. The doors that are there are there. We're using the two doors that are there on the right. The double doors in the front will open up into the commercial space by itself. So if you have any other questions for me, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thurman. Is there anyone else here to speak to this application? All right, we'll come for discussion by the commission, and this again is in District 4. Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Couple of questions. So how many bedrooms are we talking about?
Go back to that floor plan. So, I mean, the bedroom, I'll say this, the bedroom count for downtown would allow 200 per acre, so it's coming in considerably under that. I knew that number, and I thought it was going to be right there in that table. We may want to ask the applicant specifically
Yeah.
for the bedroom count.
Do you know, Mr. Thurman, what the bedroom count is?
14 or 15.
Okay.
Thank you.
And my other question, I guess, parking would not factor into this for tenants to park?
No, that's a great question. So part of the application that came in was the format of an off-site parking agreement. They have identified a location for that off-site parking, and that would be executed during the plans review stage. But we've seen the agreement, we've checked it to make sure that those spaces are available, and they are. So they're able to meet the ordinance for the off-site parking for the residents.
And I guess my last, student housing, right? I say they say multi-family, but it's, I mean, let me back up. Are they building per bedroom, or are they building apartment style units?
Probably another good question for the applicant. I mean, it's, the layout is, it does have shared common space, but you do have the unit mix there. They look to be multiple bedrooms per unit. Yes, sir.
Do you know
Is that the case?
Yeah, there are multiple bedrooms per
Okay.
unit, but it's apartment style. They are individual apartments with multiple bedrooms.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we're going to move on to item number 9.
All right, this is a rezone request for 295 Doherty Street. The request is to rezone from commercial downtown to government, G zone. Future land use would remain downtown, and the downtown design area would also remain unchanged, which is the Doherty Street design area. There wasn't a concept plan submitted with this, but we do have in review the structured parking that is proposed for this site. Here's that future land use view. The area that we're talking about is at the top of the screen, sort of a trapezoidal shape. And here you see the change in zoning going from commercial downtown to G, government. This gives a better view of proximity to environmental areas, but it also kind of shows the figure ground of what's already there. Current built condition is really 3 structures that share common walls that were a part of the hotel development to the south, and have been apartments over time and have been some other commercial uses. Here's an aerial view of the same. Planning Commission's recommendation is the finding that it's compatible with the comprehensive plan, compatible with the surrounding future land use and zoning, and they recommend approval of the rezone.
All right, anyone here to speak to number 9? Doherty Street, which we've seen several iterations of. Commissioner Link, this in your district.
Yeah, the ADDA desperately needs another parking deck, and this is going to fold into a larger project. We've been in discussion of it for months and months, so it's just moving forward.
Anyone else? All right, moving on to item number 10.
All right. So the fourth item tonight that was coming from the Planning Commission with recommendation is a text amendment, series of text amendments to our industrial zone uses and standards. Why this is coming to you is it's largely associated with equipping our code to deal with data centers specifically. Our current code does not have data centers as a recognized or defined use. I will note that we have had data center proposals without that in the code, and there is code section that allows for the planning director to navigate those requests, not just with data centers, but any kind of use where you have to find a category that is the best fit. Data centers have previously been interpreted as heavy manufacturing. That's largely due to the extreme uses of water, especially in the design of data centers up until recent years, and the industrial scale of the typical type of facility that we see and has been proposed. It's worth noting that our industrial zone chapter 9-11, requires all kinds of industrial uses to go through a check-down process on the impacts they have on several categories of their operation. When a use exceeds the level 1 thresholds, they move to level 2, and we have a discussion about what would it take to have that use be accommodated. And if it cannot be accommodated, it moves to a level 3. Level 3 is something that requires special use approval by this body for them to be able to move forward with what they want to do. We also have a handful of uses in that level 3 category that are automatically a special use. And I'll cut to the chase. This will be on another slide, but data centers are being slotted as a level 3 use in this proposal. So they will automatically be considered for special use in order for them to even submit for permits. They would have to come to this body and make application and state the case for how they're going to operate. Just a reminder, special uses have binding site plans, they have binding reports, they can have conditions of approval. And so all of those things are part of any kind of special use process, and that's what we are anticipating for a data center to be considered. Just a little bit of history. Only 2 sites have been proposed for data centers prior to 2025. Neither of them occurred. In those discussions, there frankly wasn't even a submittal that became official and navigated its way to permit. They were preliminary discussions that never materialized. In 2025, there were 2 sites that were considered for a data center. And no plans review application was submitted for either of those. One was the old Elberton Road rezone that you saw, and then the 900 Athena Drive, which is currently kind of in a process for consideration. In between these, well, I will note the Voiles Road item, I'm sorry. The Voiles Road item did come in, and it came in as a submittal through a utility, and it was processed as such. And so utilities, by definition and by what we understood and portrayed in that application, we're not subject to local zoning. So I just want to make that kind of clear. That's how we got to where we are. Right now, staff is using this opportunity to update this section of code and make things more specific. So planning staff in our research have identified several issues that communities across the country are dealing with. And what we're trying to do is navigate those challenges with what's being proposed. First and foremost, data centers don't really have a singular look. There are a variety of facility types, a variety of function types. Defining those is challenging. But there is work that's been done to help with that, and there's a couple different approaches that have been identified that other communities have taken on. We are taking on one of those approaches that we found in our research that we thought was a good fit for Athens. In our understanding for the varied and often extreme infrastructure demands that we see with data centers, we had a focus on those utilities that we control as a government and those issues that have been identified by us as points of concern in all of our planning exercises. So public water use is a primary concern. Facility size and location. Our land is a precious resource, just like anywhere, but even more so here because we just don't have that much of it. And we wanted to have appropriate attention to the opportunities for on-site energy infrastructure, both in a positive way, but also let's be mindful of what it takes to have these things operate. We also noted that we didn't want to write a set of text amendments that were just for the moment. We wanted to deal with the moment plus. And so we were seeing two trend lines for data center development. One that was trending towards smaller data centers, decentralized, as I've noted on the screen, that link back to some larger network of other data centers. They might still be heavy users of utilities, but they may not be that large in terms of footprint. And then there are those bigger facilities, Tier 3 and Tier 4. Some call them hypercenters. Those types of facilities are the ones that I think get a lot of attention because they just use so much land and so much infrastructure. Both of those seem to have their own development trend lines going on right now. And both bring their own sets of concerns. We also wanted to recognize that data centers might have some benefits. And the ability to maximize those benefits without bringing on the unintended consequences was one of our challenges. And then we also wanted to be mindful that when we're looking at other communities, we kept seeing community benefit agreements. And what's the best way to navigate those types of discussions with a potential developer? How do we build a process that gives that some level of expectation and frankly, some rigor, so that we're not finding ourselves piecing it together every single time somebody comes to the table? So the timeline, I think you're well familiar with. Back in December, this body adopted a moratorium on new data center development. That moratorium is presently scheduled to time out March 6th. So our marching orders were to pull together text amendments and put them through public review to get them to you on time, which is tonight. Agenda setting is February 17th. Between the moratorium adoption and tonight, we had 2 opportunities with our Planning Commission for public comment. We also had a lot of time, and I want to take a moment and thank all the work that's been going on in the community to educate people about data centers. There have been several really well done opportunities for folks to come and learn about what data centers are, what comes along with those types of facilities, and to really get educated about the topic. And so staff has participated in nearly every single one of those, not actively, but listening. We've taken those opportunities to hear what people's concerns are. So a couple basics. We'll run through this quickly. If we need to come back, we certainly can. But like I said, there's a variety of data centers, but they all tend to have the same features. Those are represented on the screen. The items of concern tend to be the cooling units. How these processors stay cool is a very big operational challenge for these developers. In the past, the least expensive method for them to do that has been to use evaporative cooling, which relies on water. Where we are now is realizing that there's other technology for that, and you'll see in this text amendment that we are requiring that these be closed-loop systems, meaning there is no evaporative cooling process involved. But that comes with its own unique set of realizations. There will be chemicals involved with that. There will be other mixes in with the water that we need to be mindful of. And frankly, that kind of slots them again in an industrial type of use. The Uptime Institute is the one that created the tiering, the tiers 1, 2, 3, and 4 for data centers. We don't need to get into that here, but it was really helpful to staff to start to pull apart the differences between these data centers. And the biggest takeaway that we had was square footage is not the issue. Function is what really defines the differences between data centers. You can have a very large data center that may not have that much of an impact on your resources. You can have a very small data center that has a very large impact. It's what's going on inside the facility that matters. So we had some slides that we presented in our public meetings. I wanted to share those with you here just to be consistent. Energy is a topic of concern. I want to make it clear, our ordinance focuses on the resources that we manage. We don't have our own energy provider. We don't have our own energy utility. So our ordinance works on those utilities that we manage. There's certainly a lot of discussion at the state level about what is going on with the power needs for these data center facilities, and that's where we're looking for the regulatory guidance to come from. Our local ordinance is not looking at energy usage specifically. In staff's development of the text, we had identified that 5 megawatts as a type, a way to understand the differences in facilities, was a way to look at energy usage to begin to understand who's doing what. And we found some comparables in other parts of the country that were really recent builds that gave us a good visual of what a 5 megawatt data center looks like, and that's what's on the screen. We thought it was important for scale to have this discussion. Two things to point out. One is the amount of land used. So in the Reno example and the El Paso example, we have a 7-acre site and a 10.2-acre site. These are not large tracts of land. And we'll look at some analysis on our land holdings that'll help bring this into perspective. Also want to point out, if we are looking at square footage, what does 5 megawatts look like in a currently built data center? And it's on the order of 61,000 square feet. As a scale comparison, that's about half of the new East Side Kroger. So most everybody's walked through that Kroger. We understand how many footsteps it took to kind of get through that. These are about half the size of that Kroger. But they're still using that much energy, and they still have their own industrial realities that come with them. Water and cooling, we just wanted to make sure we were clear. We have definitions that we've proposed that talk about open loop and closed loop systems. Our text amendment is requiring a closed loop system. The text amendment that came from staff also was anticipating a renewable energy link to that 5 megawatt threshold. What I'll note in a second is the Planning Commission took that 5 megawatt threshold out. But we had this presentation to talk about, well, how much does it take? How much renewable energy on site does a wind turbine produce, and does an array of solar panels produce, just to understand scale? So, 6 categorical sets of changes that are proposed in the text amendment that's in front of you. One is to add a series of definitions. I believe we have 6 definitions that relate to data centers. We've added data center, as is our practice, as a use in the use table of every zone that we have. But I want to make sure that I'm pointing out that it is only permitted, and even in those 2 zones that where it's permitted conditionally. One is the industrial zone, not the light industrial or our EO, only the straight I industrial zone, and the institutional zone. Procedural thing to understand about institutional zones. We don't have any of it on the map. And secondarily, anything built with an institutional zone designation is treated the same as a planned development, meaning it has a binding site plan and a binding report, and you, this body, would have to approve it. Any data center is going to be recognized and categorized as a level 3 industrial use in this text amendment. I've mentioned the level 1, level 2, and level 3 criteria. We use this as an opportunity to kind of bring those into modern terms. So we did make some updates to each of those levels, and we'll walk through those in just a second. And then design requirements. What we tried to do was use this as an opportunity for us to maybe update the standards that we have for anything that is a heavy industrial use or a light industrial use if we thought there was merit to doing so, not just for data centers. There are a couple things that we've made specific to data centers, but everything else would apply to any industrial use that slots the same. So we can come back to these slides if it's helpful. All these definitions were what was provided in your packet. Happy to break those down if you have questions, but we did have obviously a data center definition. Closed loop and open loop cooling systems, those definitions. On-site power generation, we needed to have that defined if we were going to have some sort of requirement or consideration for on-site power generation. We were also originally talking about renewable energy being a part of this regulation, and our zoning code did not have that definition. And we thought it would be really useful, not just for this exercise, but perhaps for some other things, to get that definition in here. I will note that that definition has been made consistent and compatible with that definition that was part of the ACC Clean and Renewable Energy Plan that was adopted in August of 2022. And then we added a definition for server room to differentiate between what a data center is and what a server room is. And I think for us, that's real important because we have a lot of corporate partners, industries, institutions that have these facilities. And what we don't want to do is inadvertently create confusion where we're suddenly regulating somebody's server room as if it were a data center. We want to recognize and distinguish between the two. So these text amendments focus on industrial and institutional. We don't have institutional on the map. So what you see on the screen is the land that we currently have zoned straight I industrial. This would be the land that would have an opportunity for a data center to be considered. None of this would be a by right approval. It would come to you to consider data center development in any of the locations shown on the screen in kind of that brown color. That brown area represents 1,800, just over 1,800 acres of current zoning. Of that 1,816 acres, 510 are undeveloped. And those 510 are privately owned. So we have 90 undeveloped acres that are owned by ACC. One of those is 80 acres in size, and that's where we have that new public utilities infrastructure off of Olympic. The average acreage represented in this zone is 8 acres. So think back to those examples from Reno and El Paso that were between 7 and 10 acres. 5 megawatt type facility. That's the average acreage that would be represented in these undeveloped pieces. So it's not that we're not without opportunity for a data center in terms of land in the I zone. It's just very narrow and easy to identify. So looking at the level 1 criteria, I'm going to go through these. I promise I'll go through these quickly and we can come back. But this is what's already in our code, and what's in green is what we added to help us. To make decisions, to be able to suss out which proposals are hitting these thresholds and need to go through deeper review and consideration, ultimately leading to something that may come before this body for approval. Reminder, data centers are a level 3, period. So there is no level for administrative approval or review of a data center by these definitions. Every single data center will come to this body for consideration. So we have thresholds for water. What we found, which was super helpful, is the thresholds that we have in our code and have had since the late 90s for industrial uses are very consistent with what communities across the country are adopting as part of their data center regulations. So we're pretty well equipped with some of these thresholds that we've already got on the books. Same with wastewater. It was very similar, anything exceeding 100,000 gallons per day. We're not finding that data centers produce much wastewater because what they were doing with the water caused it to evaporate, typically. Vibration, this is one of those standards that other communities are just now adopting. We've had that in our code for a while. Section D that's on the screen right now, we changed the title of that to hazardous materials use and storage. Before it was relating to fire safety. But what we wanted to do is make clear that what we're looking at is making sure that all of the local and state fire regulations have to be met or identified for any kind of materials use that you have on site. With data centers, the redundancy that's needed to keep the generators going means they have a lot of diesel stored on site typically in an atypical kind of way, very much in an industrial way. And so this is one of those categories that would have to be accommodated in their analysis and they'd have to report on it. We also recognize that if they don't use evaporative cooling, they're going to have chemicals on site to help with the cooling. That would fall into this category as well. Traffic doesn't tend to be much of an issue, but we did update the wording to help us make good decisions on traffic thresholds by referencing the traffic engineer's trip generation manual. Solid waste and odor and noise, we just want to point out these are in our criteria. We didn't need to make changes. In our research, we found that these were very consistent with what we were seeing in other communities. Oops. Come on. There we go. Glare, we had that standard already in the code, but we made sure to cross-reference it to our lighting code chapter that we already have on the books. Right now, it isn't cross-referenced, so we wanted to tighten that up. Stormwater, also, we improved the language there to make it easier for both applicants and staff to work with these expectations. And then we added a section about phasing, because that is something that we were hearing from other communities was a bit of a loophole. What happens if somebody comes in and says, well, we're not going to make that threshold that you're worried about. Our first phase is going to be well under that threshold. And then that gets developed and approved. That creates an expectation, and it makes it harder when you look at later phases to say no. What we wanted to do is make sure that phasing is a part of the discussion up front, and it's anticipated as part of the consideration, not just of data centers, but of industrial uses, period. So level 2 requirements. If you're above those thresholds I just mentioned, you become a level 2. What we've added here is at the bottom of the screen in section C. In our research, we found that a lot of communities were getting pre- and post-construction reports. That reporting of what they anticipated as far as those metrics that we just listed in each of those categories, and then a year later, how are they actually operating? Are they in line with what they promised, or are they not? And if they're not, what are we going to do about it? So this section produces a framework for staff to work through these folks that if they get out of line with those approved thresholds, we have an opportunity to see them report, and we can come back and review and make sure they come into compliance. That is a theme that was carried forward into level 3, but first I'll note that we added data centers as one of those automatic level 3 uses. We also added the word munitions into the explosives category. We've had some reason to kind of add that in there, not because we've had a proposal, but we've seen in other communities those proposals do occur, and we really didn't have the tool in the toolbox to help us with that conversation. So we just wanted to say, all right, if we're doing this, let's make sure munitions are also automatically a level 3 and have to come to the Mayor and Commission. Not going to read all this, but the point of the level 3 submittal requirements is if you've made it to that highest level of industrial use, we are going to have an expectation that we're going to hear from you annually about how you're performing against those criteria that we identified as level 1 thresholds. And so this spells out in great detail what those expectations are. So when somebody comes to town, they know exactly what we're going to be asking for. And there's really no debate about the terms up front. We're not making this up as we go along. We're not developing this as we have a discussion. It's in our code. This is how we want to function. We felt like this was a great tool. We did see it in some other communities' codes, and we thought it was value added for what we were doing here, not just for data centers, but for any heavy industry. We had some design standards that we wanted to enhance to help with this, some language about setback areas and where we get landscaping, and then we introduced 4 sections that were really inspired by the data center development type, but really could apply to all kinds of industrial uses. So 400 feet, when you have an industrial development within 400 feet of that outer property line, we're asking and requiring that we have acoustical barriers. That's F. In G, we're talking about additional buffering, not just with plantings, but also an earthen berm that would have a minimum height of 6 feet. That does a number of things, but sound attenuation is one of those. Working with any kind of vapor or something that may move through allows for some screening, and it's also a visual break from the roadway. We also had a standard for generator testing that we thought was important. And then we have that specific note about data centers using a true closed-loop cooling system as we've defined. We also had to address parking. Data centers, as we found, sometimes, typically tend to be overparked. The need for parking for employees is not the same as it is with other industrial uses. So our stance was, if one's coming, let's not require additional paving for something that's not going to be used. So Planning Commission's recommendation had really 3 main points. They recommended approval with the stated revisions that we walked through. They included a request for this body to ask the Planning Commission to work with planning staff to develop data center-specific special use criteria. And this was their way, I think, of categorically addressing some of the things that were in the staff proposal related to renewable energy and related to the scaling of a data center. They felt more comfortable with that being put into some special use criteria, but certainly the criteria that we have today is sufficient for those things to be talked about. But if we're going to have more upfront predictability of the process, they thought it might be useful to have those criteria spelled out. And so, not that it needed to be in this to take action, but as a work product over the next year or so, they thought that was important. And then the public comment that was received, there were several emails that had 8 or 9 points that folks were wanting to be considered. One of those points that came out in that public comment was the notion of a citizen oversight group for data centers specifically. The Planning Commission just expressed their general support for that notion and wanted that to be known to this body. But the Planning Commission's recommendation is for approval of the text amendment as I've just outlined.
Thanks, Bruce. I appreciate it. All right, if folks have interest, if you'd line up at the podium, and again, as you provide public input, we're interested in your name and place of residence. You've got that 3-minute opportunity as I described earlier, and if you would fill out one of those cards and put them in the slot, if not at this moment, then before you leave tonight, that would help us make sure we accurately capture your name and contact information. So now is that time. Step right up. Good to see you.
Hello, my name is Sally Coonan. I live at 760 Rambling Road. I want to begin by thanking each of you for your the time you devote to serving the citizens of this community. I'm very grateful for your service. I also want to thank our Planning Commission and the staff members who have worked extremely hard to develop recommendations for data center ordinance. In a very short period of time, they created a comprehensive document that addresses many of the issues connected with data center construction, its needs and uses. And in the process, they listened to and responded thoughtfully to citizen input. So thank you. That said, I would urge the Commission to pause before voting on the Planning Commission's recommendation to allow more time to study the full impact the data centers may have on our community. One thing we do know is that impact could be enormous. The very concept of a data center is relatively new to most of us. The issues involved in building one are numerous, complex, and intertwined with many different fields: social, political, environmental, and economic, all within a world that is developing at breakneck speed. Even experts who spend their professional days studying AI and data centers are struggling to keep up. So why not move cautiously? Why not take a few more weeks to ensure that the ordinance eventually adopted is the very best it can be? There are still many important questions to be answered. For example, what happens during a drought? Would water use restrictions also apply to data centers? Do we have efficient existing transmission lines to deliver energy? And if not, would new lines have to be placed? How would they affect nearby neighbors? And what happens if a data center becomes obsolete, as some predict? Who is responsible for the building? And on and on. Last year, you made a wise choice in placing a moratorium on data center ordinance. I urge you to extend the moratorium a few more weeks so that we can have more time to investigate and explore this extremely complex and consequential issue. I see no downside in pressing pause, and I do see a tremendous upside. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coonan. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Lexi Torres, and I'm a Athens resident. I live at 100 Sharon Court. To the credit to the lady that just spoke before me, I am a senior director at Microsoft. I work for Microsoft Security. Sorry, I haven't spoken publicly before. my charter is, I'm the GC for Security for AI for Microsoft Security on the management team. So my team's infrastructure is the most critical infrastructure on the planet. We manage all of the fleets of devices that are needed for the Fortune 500. So I wanted to come here to share some of the requirements that I am collecting in my job as the product leader in this space for Microsoft. We have heard from customers that friction is absolutely necessary for the deployment of AI and the infrastructure required for that. So to the lady's point earlier, taking your time is the right move, and that is what corporate America for global companies are doing with AI. The companies I speak with want to hold AI back from accessing their resources. They're very worried about their resources and the security and capacity of their resources. So I think this municipality needs to adopt the same principle, and we need to prioritize conserving the capacity and use of our resources. Data centers are resource intensive. There's a lot more involved in the lifecycle management and maintenance and overhead to maintain these pieces of infrastructure, and we need to consider all of the impacts that that will have on anyone who is allocating resources for that maintenance. So my recommendation to you, and I'd be happy to provide more information, I've been in the big firm tech industry for 20 years. This is my 10th year at Microsoft, and before that I built infrastructure for Apple. And I built their infrastructure for their global retail sales operation. So my recommendation to this council is to please take your time. Please look at your resource allocation and management and capacity, and do not over pivot on this hyperscale build for data centers, because in my opinion, this will probably not sustain. We are already seeing early indicators that this is not a sustainable model of development. So I'm happy to speak with anybody about that.
Thank you, Ms. Torres.
Well, that was awesome.
Good evening.
Hello. My name is Laura Iyer, and I'm at 1031 Hollyberry Lane in Athens, Georgia, and I represent Southern Sustainability Institute, and we've been kind of trying to educate ourselves as a community about data centers. And definitely thank you all very much. There are so many issues that you deal with, and then to plop a data center super complex issue on top of everything else you're dealing with, I really appreciate all that you do and all that you do to serve, and also to tackle this. And also, thank you, Planning Department. You've been great, and you have been coming to all the meetings and public, and really took our comments to heart, and we really felt heard. So thank you for that. And as we know, these are not simple facilities. They have water usage, energy demand, transmission infrastructure is what I'm just learning about today in a big way. Land use, noise, really big environmental impacts, and finding out new ways that it's impacting the environment every day as well. And of course, long-term economic implications. And so it's very layered. The technical issues that required careful thought, and as we're all learning, shared understanding before permanent decisions are made. So the request tonight, like many's that you've heard, is going to be on let's make sure that we're being informed together. So number one, let's make sure we're all educating ourselves as we go forward. And also, I'd like to see the moratorium extended so we can do this education. And I'm not delaying it for its own sake, but an opportunity for commissioners, planning committee, the public in particular, to really deepen our understanding of the technical, legal, environmental, economic dimensions involved in this. So these facilities evolve quickly, and the policies to govern them must be grounded on clear current information. The other big thing that we want to keep on top and center stage is making sure that every bit of this process is transparent and remain guiding principle from the first discussion through the full life cycle of this facility, including eventual decommissioning. Again, just learning about issues with decommissioning data centers. So again, we need to be a part of it, and it needs to be transparent all the way through. And we should have access to clear information and meaningful opportunities to engage at every single stage of this process. So this transparency will help build trust and going forward. So, and then thirdly, I would really highly recommend we bring some outside expertise to this. We've all done the best we can to educate ourselves, but organizations like Science for Georgia or the Southern Environmental Law Center coming into our community and help educating us all together on this, just to kind of get some other feedback that we all can hear, not just certain departments. And with that, I want to thank you. My time is up, but thank you for your service
Ms.
again,
Sire.
and thank you for letting me make my comments.
Good evening.
Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia Asher. I live at 105 College Station Road. And even though I've been working as a volunteer over the past year with Science for Georgia studying data centers, there's still a lot that I don't understand about the regulation of them and what's most appropriate. The things that I can say, I do really appreciate in the proposed text amendment that all data centers require a special land use permit. I think that's a really positive response to public feedback. And I also support the creation of a citizen oversight group due to a lack of public trust around data centers that was partially instigated by the Voiles Road data center that popped up without any public oversight. I also think that extending the moratorium for a few more months is a good idea to make sure that we really have covered every single issue that we need to regulate about data centers. One issue I would really like to see addressed is energy use reporting. I understand that Athens cannot regulate energy because that is regulated by the Public Service Commission, but I still think that we can ask data centers to report their energy use so we understand what resources they are actually using in our community. And I would like to see the planning department sit down with the Public Service Commission and maybe some outside experts and really discuss what we can do to make sure that we know what energy is being used by these consumers. Additionally, we had made a request for prohibiting NDAs in data center development to avoid secrecy. And I would like to see more investigation into that topic, if that's something that's possible to do, and how we can include that in our data center regulation. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Asher. Good evening.
Hey, y'all. How's it going? My name is Daria Kalantari. I live at 120 Winter Circle, Winterville, Georgia. A lot of what I'm going to say has already been said, so I'll make it quick. I just want to emphasize those things. I think the changes so far that have been proposed are going in the right direction. I'm also supporting an extension on the moratorium of the data center ordinance, so we can take a look at a couple other things. Just what Olivia said, we still don't require energy use reporting. I think that is going to be really important in the long run. Coincidentally, Peter Hubbard will be here next week, so someone from the PSC will be here. Maybe that's a good opportunity to talk and get some guidance from the PSC. I think also just general overview from experts. I'm not even going to pretend like I'm a scientist or know as much as everyone else here, but I did go to the Environmental Justice Day at the Capitol a couple weeks ago, along with a couple other people in this room. Did hear from Amy Sharma, who is from Science for Georgia, and she's very knowledgeable, and I think getting her guidance or someone of similar knowledge and expertise just to double check would be really helpful. And I think this is something that's already been talked about even before and after today, but just another reminder too that data centers don't provide jobs, even though that's often what they're advertised as like bringing jobs to the community. Just something to remember, like when we talked about the parking spots, I'm glad we're limiting that, but they only provide jobs during the construction phase, and then that's sort of it. So something to keep in mind as we are discussing data centers in the future. But again, I hope that we are working towards thoughtful and preventative actions. We should not have to face avoidable challenges related to these data centers, and we should rely on data and scientific expertise to guide our decisions. We should listen to them more. We don't listen to scientists enough, and they do a lot of hard work. So thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Daria. Good evening.
My name is Aaron Jocelyn. I live at 274 North Rock Springs here in Athens. I'm here to speak in support of extending the moratorium that y'all have wisely put in place. I would like to see that put indefinitely with no time limit, just so that all the different discussions that need to take place can, without setting any sort of artificial limit. In fact, I would like to see Athens-Clarke County outright ban data centers, but I'm not sure if that's entirely possible. With additional data centers, Athens-Clarke County will not be able to meet its commitments to reach the net zero carbon emissions set forth in the Clean and Renewable Energy Plan with the addition of more of these centers. These facilities are intense consumers of both electricity and water, consistent with heavy industrial operations, as we've already heard this evening, despite their initial claims of being light industrial. Georgia Power is restarting dormant coal-burning power plants to feed their insatiable demand, and we are burning the habitability of our planet to power a few psychopaths' need for a grokkified, Nazi-promoting child sexploitation assistance. Some of the owners of these tech companies that would benefit from these facilities here have routinely demonstrated that they lack the moral compass to be acceptable members of this community. Why would we allow them to use our community's resources to engage in conduct that violates what is considered moral behavior if it were to be committed from one of our neighbors? Additionally, as just mentioned, claims of employment generation made by their proponents are routinely exaggerated to the point of being fraudulent in order to get approval from municipalities desperate to show that they are pro-business. So I ask, to what business is Athens so desperate to debase itself that we would be willing to sell out to these psychopaths? Athens should not be in the business of being a lackey to out-of-state billionaires seeking to extract wealth out of this community, but instead should be in the business of making sure that Athens is a fair-minded, inclusive city that works to make life better for all its residents. Athens should not work to line the pockets of psychopathically rich, but should instead work for ordinary people. If the city cannot outright ban data centers, or if the state of Georgia moves to assert its local governance is best bona fides and bans the ability of local governments to ban such facilities, I urge the mayor and commission to make the zoning requirements so onerous that they de facto cannot be built here. We've heard quite a bit of information about changes that are being proposed, and I think those are all wonderful things to be thinking about. I think we can make it even more difficult.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
I just wanted to reiterate, I support extending the moratorium.
Good evening.
Good evening, y'all. Oop. My name is Jay Boyd. I live at 142 Oxford Court, and I'm a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation here in Athens. I'm asking the Athens-Clarke County Board of Commissioners to extend the data center moratorium past March 6th to allow the Planning Commission to address issues of clarity. The first issue has to do with the text amendments focused on the closed-loop system. I'd like to be clear. Closed-loop systems solve a PR issue, not an environmental one. To make up for reduced water use, these systems use more electricity for cooling. Is this something that the Planning Commission has actually grappled with? This increased electricity use would not only bring with it its own ecological challenges, but it means that the negative impacts of these data centers would be concentrated onto the communities directly surrounding these centers. Across the country, electricity demands of these data centers has raised prices in the surrounding areas. Between now and the moratorium's passing in December, we've gone door to door to educate residents of Spring Valley Trailer Park about data centers. This is the neighborhood that sits right across the street from the proposed Athena Studios data center. Residents have told us that they've already seen their electrical bills skyrocket. Tenants told us that in some cases, their bills went up $300 in 1 month. Additional increases could force people out of their homes, and with already outrageous housing prices in Athens-Clarke County, this would compound with the many affordability crises in Athens. The livelihoods of Athenians are not worth sacrificing for the profit of the few far away. To consider these issues and more, I please request that the Commission extend the moratorium on data centers in Athens-Clarke County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Maristella Twazin. I live at 385 River Road. I am also a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation here in Athens, and I'm here to call on the Commission to extend the temporary moratorium on data centers to allow for more time to refine ordinances and to address all the concerns of the Athens community. Many people here have spoken about the energy use reporting. I would like to speak about the need to ensure that there will be true democratic involvement and participation of the communities who will be most impacted by data centers. During December, when Reynolds Capital looked into converting Athena Studios into a data center, the PSL visited the Spring Valley mobile home community right across from Athena Studios. We went from door to door to ask if anyone has heard about this proposal, and nobody did. Of course, there were opportunities for public comment here at City Hall, but the people who would have lived right next to this 1.2 million square foot data center, they were not aware of the proposed data center at Athena Studios, so they were not present at public input here at City Hall. The perspective of those who would have been most impacted by this proposal was not present because they were not informed. Everyone was shocked to hear about this proposal. They strongly disapproved of the proposal at Athena Studios. Residents said they were already suffering from skyrocketing energy bills, and they would not be able to afford higher energy bills due to a new data center. We spoke to an older gentleman, Mr. Green, who invited us into his home. He had suffered multiple strokes, and he depends on a machine for the pacing of his heart. He said if he ever loses power, he has 5 minutes to get to power before the machine failure can be fatal for him. And he strongly refused data centers being built across the street from his community. This is a low-income community. Formerly homeless people, we met formerly homeless people at this community. We met a lot of disabled people in this community who said that they would not be able to make it to City Hall for public comment if they even were aware about this data center proposal. So I think that, opening for public comment is great, but it's not enough. For the proposed data center at Athena Studios, I believe that it does not meet the zoning requirements. But for future data center proposals who will meet the zoning requirements, who will, be built in the industrial zones or the institutional zones, we want to know, how does Athens-Clarke County plan to reach out to those communities in the industrial or institutional zones to make sure that these communities are informed, to request the input of these specific communities who live in those areas?
I appreciate you coming tonight. Good evening.
I'm Denise Horton. I live at 815 Boulevard here in Athens. I do want to start with thanking the Planning Department staff, the Planning Commission, and all of you for the time and energy you've already dedicated to this work. Unfortunately, I think there is more to be done, and I want to encourage the continuation of the moratorium. Not only will that provide the Planning Department more time to work through some of the details that you've already mentioned, but it also provides time to see what the General Assembly is going to do in terms of ordinances or legislation that they might pass that also has an impact on what we will be doing locally. As others have said, I would love for there to be more work on capturing the amount of energy that is used by the centers, and I think that there may be some ways that can be done. But that's just one of several points that need to be refined in order to ensure that there's transparency, not just when these centers are approved or the first year, but for on and on and on. As I continue to read news articles about the growth of data centers throughout the country, I realize how many engineers, lawyers, and other professionals that data centers have working with them and finding the loopholes to work around things. And so I think continuing the moratorium will provide our community the time that we need to answer as many questions, to address as many loopholes as possible, and to make whatever data centers may come to our community the best citizens and neighbors that they can possibly be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Horton. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Isaac Johnson. I live at 367 Rosenell Howard Street. I'm also a member of the Party for Social Liberalism and Liberation here in Athens. At risk of sounding like a broken record, I also would love to encourage all of you to extend the moratorium. I once again want to stress that it's quite impressive how much the Planning Commission has done to research this in this short time and provide such an extensive and thorough overview. But as extensive and thorough as it is, this is an unbelievably complicated and evolving issue. As Maristella had mentioned, we traveled to the Spring Valley community and talked with a lot of residents there. And these people aren't NIMBYs. They're not worried about how the data center is going to look. They aren't worried. Some of them aren't even particularly worried about the sound. These are people who have very real life and death concerns about the resource use of these data centers, who are going to be very majorly impacted. And this is just evolving so quickly, and there's so much we don't know about these data centers and don't know about the ways that the owners of these data centers are going to change the technology and advance the technology once they're approved. I think, the question of access to consistent electricity can be life or death, as the example of Mr. Green makes very clear, that Maristella mentioned. So for this and a whole lot of other reasons, I think it's incredibly important that we take our time. I think someone else mentioned that, I don't really see a downside to us waiting. This doesn't feel like a particularly pressing issue to approve a new standard. I think taking our time seems like the wise approach and could really make a difference in our community. We need to be sure that we can ensure access to our resources for all Athenians before we open up those resources to make profits for Silicon Valley tech billionaires. So let's make sure that this is done right in a way that protects all Athenians, including ones who aren't able to come here and speak for themselves. So thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Aaron Fu. I'm a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and I live at 383 Nacoochee Avenue. I'm also here to support the extension of the moratorium. I think that's a sound idea, and to support the creation of a citizen oversight board. This industry, this AI industry, is a blight on the world, and we might not be able to stem the tide from here, but we can certainly prioritize the well-being of poor and working people in the county and do what we can from here for their well-being. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fu. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Mary P. Bagby. I'm a resident of Athens-Clarke County, and I'd like to ask you to postpone this data system that you're planning to put in place. There are many things that's going on, and the energy is one of my concerns, because even last year, as a person that lives alone, I spent $600 a month for electricity. My electric bill went from like $300 the year before to $600. I couldn't do anything about it. We need auditors, because you have to pay what the utility companies tell you to pay. Need auditors here, even here with the mayor and council. when Miss Stephanie Johnson tried to do an audit here, she was fired. There's no accountability for money that's being spent in Athens-Clarke County. The people are being abused, taken advantage of. We need auditors. And what I'd like to say to the mayor and council, as well as all the people here, that someone needs to get the Treasury Department of the United States of America to come to Athens-Clarke County and do an audit and find out where all this federal money is going. And I see where y'all say you're going to reallocate $6.2 million to different things you're going to reallocate. The community, the residents of this city need to know where that money is. We need to know how to apply for that money for different things that we need in this city. Talk about Athens first and Athens for all in one Athens. Then you need to distribute the money to people that need it. Stop building trail parks for dogs and build some houses for the homeless people. You have buildings that you can renovate and put people in. I would like for someone in this community, in this audience, to please get in touch with the Treasury Department. It doesn't matter whether you are Green Party, Red Party, Blue Party, Black Party, White Party. It doesn't matter if you're Republican. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat. It doesn't matter if you're a Libertarian, Independent. It matters that we need to do right by the people and the citizens that are suffering in this city. And that money that's been coming to Athens for years and years and years, millions of dollars coming because of poverty. But then when the money comes for poverty, which the black people are impoverished, you take the money, hide it. Don't tell us how to apply for the money. And then when it's too late for us to apply for it, you ask the federal government to allow you to reallocate that money to something else. And it's time for you to stop it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bagby. All right, well, come to discussion by the body. Anybody like to kick off conversation? Commissioner Thornton.
Wait a minute. Yes, I'm gonna try to. Oh, I'm making my voice go. I'm gonna try to whisper a little bit lower. I don't want to. I said I wasn't going to forget this slide, Bruce, but I think it was. Can you kind of go back maybe 5 slides? Okay. It was. I tell you what it was about. It was about the hyper centers.
Was it the definition of data center that you were
It was with the
interested in?
tiers, and it said, and it was like 2 and 3
Yep. Okay.
hyper centers. The data center that is operating in my district, unknowingly, what I'm trying to ask is that, what tier is that?
So I will say.
I mean,
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe what you're suggesting is what you're going to do, but you haven't done with the data center that is already up and operating.
Yes, ma'am. The Voiles Road facility, we're not really sure of a tier designation for that particular facility. I couldn't speak to that to know where it would fall in that tiering. That was not part of our discussion when that was coming through. So that is a new concept that we've come across since our research since Thanksgiving.
I guess my thought is, and again, I apologize. I guess my thought is, I don't think that we would even be having this conversation if the Athena data center wasn't so public. So I'm trying to figure out the data center on Vages Road. Are we monitoring that at all in any kind of way? Or are they just out there doing whatever they do?
So the review that was done when that facility came in was not for zoning compliance, but it was related to engineering issues. And so, impact on the roadway, the water usage, the wastewater production, all of those things were part of their submittal. To say that there's monitoring of their water usage, I would say that's correct. It is the same that we would have for other industrial uses, making sure that their drawdown is consistent with what it was designed for. So there is that, but it's not monitoring in an ordinance sense. It's
Okay, so where is that at? Where is that at, the monitoring that you would normally do? Who has that?
So that would be the reading of meters by public utilities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I guess, again, it's too late for Vajas, and I guess my irritation comes from that data center was built in an area that already had water problems. We had toxic wells over there. And then I think there was something that you said that it comes before this local government. So that did not have to come before us for the Vajas one.
There wasn't a zoning process that would have brought it to this body. And so when it was reviewed for water usage, because it was evaluated against the level 1 and level 2 criteria, it was found by public utilities to be able to be served. And so that's how it was able to connect to water service.
So again, my frustration is public utilities or whoever, that was already an area that was struggling with water, period. We just put in new lines. And to put that data center right there at the corner, and I assume it didn't come before us because it was built by right?
The applicant was a utility. And so there was no zoning trigger to bring that before this body for a zoning approval. And so without that, the only way it would have come before this body is if in public utilities analysis, they weren't able to provide the water service without approval from the mayor and commission for additional water service or some sort of capital expenditure. That would have brought it before you. And that's how those tiering system works in our code. But it didn't need that. So that additional level of review by this body wasn't necessary by the way the code was structured.
So how much money does this data center bring in? What kind of dollars does it bring in?
I'm not sure.
Well, I would like to know that. I think that since we did not do any community benefits, I'm trying to figure out how we, the community, benefit at all with this data center. So maybe there's some dollar value to it. I'm not going to talk no more.
I've got Commissioners Link and Myers.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we need to extend the moratorium by at least 90 days. And this is an extremely complex issue, and we've got a great deal of community interest in it. And, it's something that I've kind of been interested in and studying for a while, and I still don't have my head wrapped around it. And the technology is changing so quickly. The laws are changing quickly. From what I understand, the state legislature is addressing this. And yeah, I mean, I think we have some serious questions to ask ourselves about the overall morality of this technology. I want to thank Mr. Jocelyn for some of his comments. By definition, artificial intelligence is an amoral enterprise. And, we have lots of people in the community concerned about this. And one thing each and every one of us can do to address this issue is don't use AI. Use your brain. If you have to write an email, use your brain. Every time you write a 300-word email using AI, you use an entire bottle of water. We've heard, the planning department has done some research and showed it to us. And Bruce, I want to ask you to put that, if you could put this slideshow online, along with the agenda documents, because I feel like it's very helpful beyond just like the normal planning documents. I think we definitely need to expand these criteria. I mean, I have a question for the attorney. Can we outright outlaw data centers in our community? Does the state allow us to specifically prohibit particular uses from coming to our community?
I'm happy to look into that, but I think that'll be difficult to do.
Okay, but we could expand the criteria to make it onerous. I mean, I would love to see us have like very, very stringent requirements for renewable energy. If anybody was to come here for a data center, I'd love to see it with all industry. We talk about job creation. I mean, not only do these facilities not create that many jobs, they actually eliminate hundreds of jobs. People are losing their jobs all over the world every second due to this technology. And it's a technology that very seldom benefits regular working people. It's causing a heck of a lot of strife globally, social strife. I think we need to, beyond just practical, fiscal, environmental questions, we need to talk about the ethical implications of this technology and whether we want to even consider any possibility of allowing these facilities in our community.
Got Commissioner Myers, then Commissioner Davenport.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone who came out and who also communicated with the planning department beforehand, and the planning department for having, reached out and worked with the community. That was very admirable on everyone's side there, and the planning commission as well. I'm very glad that they pushed for the special use permit for all applications for data centers, but right now I am supporting the community push for extending the moratorium. The more I learn about this, the more I realize I don't know. And when I think about how much time we spend in the Legislative Review Commission committee on learning about invasive species and noise ordinances, it's like this is so much more than that. I did just share some resources with my colleagues. I think I mentioned it before, but the Athens, not the Athens, but the Association of Community, County Commissioners of Georgia had a really great webinar. I just listened to it again or more carefully. It has about 6 speakers on there. I just shared that with everyone. And then I also listened to the New York Times Daily podcast today. It's called When AI Comes to Town, the Backlash Over Data Centers, which hits home because it talks about commissions dealing with it as well. I think it's really important to understand where these data centers have come from and why they're coming to Georgia. Data centers require a lot of energy use, and they are coming to Georgia in particular because our rates for industrial use of electricity are so much better. They're like 15% cheaper than most other states. So it's a good business decision to come here. But they've also, I learned this on another ACCG trip I went on about power, how the power needs for Georgia have increased over 50%, and I might have the numbers wrong here, and more than they were 2 years, like the projections of what we need. And 80% of that new capacity need was because of the anticipated arrival of data centers here. And one thing I just learned today, which ties in with what I learned on this field trip, was that power has to, the power that we have all gets moved around, but it gets around on these transmission lines. And one of the things we haven't even, thought about is when these transmission lines come to a substation that's associated right with a data center, utilities can do eminent domain without any public input to extend electric lines. And so if you look where, there's a whole social justice issue that's connected with this, and there's even more things than we touched, that are touched in the ordinance language that we had. I also shared something that DeKalb County has this whole separate section on data centers. I'm not sure if that's passed or not, but I shared a link to that in there. I learned about, from the stuff I listened to today, about the generators, that they have to have these backup generators, and they are very polluting to the air if they are used. And they have to be used because the AI, as our second speaker on this, it's so security-wise, you have to have 2 backup systems for the power. So there's so many, I'm not going to bore you with all these details of things I learned, but there's a whole lot more that I'm learning each time I dig into this. And so I think we have a good first step, but I think we need to go further here. These are, this is, if you look at that map of where the zones are, where you could have data centers, there are implications to the local communities in terms of if there were need for more power line grids going in there for these generators, not just the noise, but for the pollutants that come out of them. There's just stuff that we don't know. And so I'm not going to say that I know everything here now. I just know that we need to learn more, and we need to make this as tight as could be. We spend a lot of time on short-term rentals, but this is maybe the short-term rentals have more of an impact locally and different properties, but this has such a big impact to the state, to the community, and we're also an example to other communities, to be blunt. So we come up with a good ordinance that affects how other communities work on this as well. So I'm all for pushing a moratorium out further for another couple of months.
We've got Commissioner Davenport and Commissioner Taylor.
All right, thank you. So thank you for these slides. Those slides are always better than what we get, by the way. So I got even more confused, but yeah, I agree in extending a moratorium to learn more. What are my questions? So all data centers are level 3?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then they all require a special use, but they're only allowed in the EI zones?
I.
Just the I zone, yeah.
The industrial and the institutional. Institutional, to even get on the map, would have to come through the through the mayor and commission, planning commission, and you guys. And then industrial would be the only place a data center could be considered. And the way it would be considered is through the special use process.
But it's not allowed in AR or RS?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So you did mention something about munitions, but I'll send you an email.
Okay.
So, like, we're literally building an extra reservoir because we are, sharing water with Jackson, Banks, County, and that reservoir is not even coming online for a few more years. To use, I just think, just to move forward on data center, I love to get attorneys' advice about banning them, but, put data centers in Jackson County or Banks County or somewhere out there, but we're already struggling with water resources. We had a drought, remember, just a few years ago, and we asked, our residents to say, hey, blah, 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 can y'all conserve water and, shower together and all that fun stuff. But, just the thought of adding more data centers or even creating language for them considering their water usages, it doesn't fit what Athens is really about in our future growth when it comes to the residents that are coming to the town. And but plus also, I do like the ACCG comments about data centers. I ask my coworkers I'm thinking about work, my colleagues to take a look at that ACCG that Commissioner Thornton and Myers participate in. But I have a question about bandwidth, because also data centers use bandwidth. And some of those zones don't have adequate bandwidth. So if you build a data center, wouldn't that affect the neighboring household bandwidth as well? Because, essentially they are storage houses for, these big companies to store data, and whenever they're going to, pull that data, it's going to use a lot of bandwidth. So I just know on the east side that, there's not that much of fiber that's out there. But lastly, can you go over one more time, or maybe send an email, the 5 megawatt, 61,000 square feet, half the east side Kroger, and then can you go over again, why not and I do support a user group, but I prefer it to be more environmental overall. But go over the 5 megawatts and why the staff recommended not doing the solar panels? I missed that.
So the Planning Commission's recommendation was to not distinguish by power usage and then create sort of a recognition that a certain level was acceptable versus another level. Their recommendation is that all data centers, anything meeting the definition of data centers is a special use. Where staff was looking at questions of scale, we were finding the 5 megawatt data center in other communities, like the examples on the screen, were of a size and a water usage, especially if we're using closed loop systems, that the water usage you're really talking about is to charge the system. It's not a daily, you're not supplying water for evaporative cooling. But what we were looking at was what might be a scale that could be approvable, and again, only in industrial. We weren't saying that this was applicable anywhere else. We were just trying to kind of sort through that. And so that's where this proposal came through. But the Planning Commission didn't feel comfortable with that, and they thought really just as a category of use.
Go over the renewable energy again.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. So one of the things that was in the staff proposal about renewable energy was the ability to have a larger center, a center that, not larger, but a more intense center, would be any amount of power usage over the 5 megawatts would have to be provided on-site using a renewable energy source.
Okay.
And that would be the only way to get above 5 megawatts. That's where we inserted that. So we tried to incentivize, in a way, the use of renewable on-site energy.
All right, which one of y'all want to work on the CDO for March? Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Taylor?
Yeah, so thank you to all of the residents who came out and spoke. I know you guys have been doing due diligence, so thank you for going to Spring Valley trailer parks and informing them. Also to the planning department for this great report. I had asked Judd the same thing about the limitations for the data centers, because I just feel like outlawing a lot of things in Athens-Clarke County, but I know I have to ask Judd first. And so everybody's touched on a lot of what we heard, except for applying NDAs, for NDAs to be like a deal breaker. Like, we should know at all times what they're doing if they are going to be operating in Athens-Clarke County. And I'm not sure if it should be put into the planning report, or how would that work?
That's something we would need to research, whether we can require that.
Okay. Thanks. That was it.
Got Commissioner Thornton and Commissioner Myers again, and then I've got a couple questions for the attorney.
I think someone mentioned, maybe I should let Carol talk for me. I think someone mentioned that the Public Service Commission is having a meeting here next week, and I think there's actually 2 meetings, and one of them is at New Grove at 1 o'clock. But I don't know when the other one is. Does anybody in the audience know?
6 o'clock in Winter.
Oh, okay. So we got 2 opportunities to talk to the Public Service Commission. My next thought, so Bruce.
Yes, ma'am.
So the one on Vodges, even before all of this is written, it's still a level 3, no matter what. Or no?
So the Voiles Road facility is operating.
But is it a level? No, or there were no levels?
It did not, in the analysis, it did not make it to level 3, no ma'am.
Okay.
Yep.
So then, and what you're going to tell me when I was talking about how much money is generated is it's like reading the water meter.
I will follow up and see if we can get you a number, and we'll
Yeah.
share it with everybody.
I would like to know what that kind of generates. But yeah, I think those meetings are important. Oh, and my last thought, we're still in the beginning of the legislative session, and we need to be having this conversation with our state representatives. I would also think that should happen maybe sooner than later. The other thing is, I agree with a moratorium, but I think a moratorium should last until after we see what the state is going to recommend. So if we do a moratorium, let's not jump in front of the state. Let's see what they're going to, bring down, and then we'll have something tangible to work with. But a moratorium is definitely, I'm on board. And I do think that we need to be meeting with our state representatives. And if nothing else, maybe we could already invite them to the 2 meetings that are already scheduled. At least let them know. Because the first
Commissioner,
thing.
particularly pertinent to interest in General Assembly activity is that crossover day this year in the General Assembly is Friday, March 6th. So that's the date by which a bill needs to have passed one chamber or the other in order to proceed. And that's the 30th of 40 days of the legislative session.
March
So
the 6th.
March the 6th is crossover day. That's right. So, Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, I just, I think there's definitely the sentiment here for the moratorium. I know I've talked with our wonderful county attorney, Judd Drake there, who says he has, that his office has the paperwork ready to do an extension on that. So I'm not going to be present for the March 3rd voting meeting, but I'd like any guidance from the county manager or on how we should proceed. This seems very complex here about getting the input, being transparent, making sure everything's, reviewed, and any suggestions about a process for moving this forward. I know, just in terms of parliamentary rules, I know the mayor and the attorney can figure out how we put a hold or we send do something with the actual item and how we get the moratorium on the agenda. I'm sure they have the answers to that. But how we go about really reviewing this and informing ourselves, being transparent, if we can get any counsel from the manager's office or the planning department on how to do that, that would be great. If you have any thoughts now.
Yeah, I mean, my only first thought is actually kind of that same thing a bit kind of turned on its head a little, because if there is an interest ultimately in extending the moratorium, the thing that I think that will help Bruce the absolute most is what is expected to occur in that extended moratorium. A piece of it I've heard is it may be extended to see what the state ultimately ends up doing, if anything, in this legislative session. But it will definitely benefit us and Bruce to know what else you would want us to kind of focus on, do those kinds of things, because otherwise I think we're going to be kind of guessing.
I'll give you one answer real quick on that. I mean, I know that when I looked at the DeKalb County one, they have these, sort of a social justice review and looking at the impact on the community in terms of so I would look at some of the things in that DeKalb County one. I mean, I'm sure you probably looked at it already, but there may be an interest here in incorporating some of those elements into it. So I'd like to, if there's anything else that can be, any problems that the data center could have with water, with energy, with diesel fuel, with anything. I know some of them are in there already, but not everything is in there. Like that, they have something called like an electric grid analysis audit, kind of thing in there, which I hadn't even thought about till right now. So those are the kind of things that I'd like to make sure that we are addressing in here.
So just to underscore what Bob began to provide, a resolution to extend a moratorium needs to offer clear direction to the planning department so they know what's expected of them and what the outcomes will be. It's also necessary under Georgia law that a moratorium be time determinate. So it can't be simply never ending or an uncertain moratorium. It has to be very clear, put ourselves in jeopardy vis-a-vis state law and lots of case law. If we do otherwise.
After the state
So
legislative session.
I'd stay, but
Well, we just need to be very specific about when the expectation would be that that moratorium would end. So those are just sort of norms of zoning law. So we can certainly talk amongst ourselves and determine when that best time would be. I think probably some informal conversation with the planning department to say, hey, here are the things that we want to get out of an additional step of work before we have code language that we're comfortable to adopt. And so we can hear from Bruce Lonnie and his colleagues, and certainly the attorney's office and John Hawkins, who works closely with them. Here's how long it would take to fulfill these tasks. What we don't want to do is set up expectations that live in one place in our hearts and minds and live in a different place in the reality of the workflow of the office.
and I was just, as far as process procedure, if you're going to, this commission can, at the next meeting, either approve, which is not going to happen, what planning commission has presented, doesn't sound like based upon the discussion, or table for up to 40 days, or remand back to the planning commission. So if you're going to do the moratorium for longer than being able to act on the next meeting, I think, and I just discussed this with Bruce, remanding it back to the planning commission is probably the best option.
And I would agree, because I think sending it back to the planning commission with as explicit a sort of instruction direction as to what to look at further would be beneficial, if that's the path you end up going.
How soon can we get the attorney's office on the legality of banning data center?
I would think pretty quickly. I would
Okay.
say that's probably not going to be a viable alternative, but I'll certainly look into it.
Work your magic.
Attorney Drake and maybe Bruce, you kind of have some potential feedback too. There are a couple of areas where I just want us to sort of understand what our toolbox looks like. Lots of us, even as public policy makers, would wish we could do a bunch of things. I wish I could ban freshmen from having vehicles in this town. That's not within my regulatory authority. But particular to the conversation underway now, of course, we are not a power provider. There are about 50 cities in Georgia that do have an electric utility, and so they have some tools in their box that unfortunately Athens-Clarke County doesn't have. If I could go back to 1975, when cities could determine if they wanted to be power providers, I would have wished that we would have, because that would have given us probably some tools that we don't have right now. But given that that is the case, do we have, and you may not know this now, Judd, but do we have the regulatory authority to say, you, business person of any sort, have to have renewable energy as part of your operation? Is that?
I don't know the answer to that. I need to research it.
Okay, all right, so that'll be something I'm definitely interested in hearing
It
more
was
about.
alluded to by one of the speakers tonight, that a lot of that's regulated by the PSC, and we're preempted, but I will certainly look into that.
Okay.
I would also add, with respect to DeKalb, we reached out to their county attorney's office today. Michael Petty, who formerly worked for my office, is actually working on this for them. They have not enacted any regulations. They're still looking into it, just to let you know. And they've got some questions, I think, regarding what the extent of their authority.
Similarly, there's a really salient question about not just the everyday use, but potentially the backup power use. A lot of people who've been following these questions are probably familiar with the Memphis facility that's used an enormous array of very polluting diesel generators to power that facility. And so I'll be interested in hearing similarly, and this doesn't have to be tonight, Judd, but in a memo subsequent to now, what's our authority around pollutants that might be produced by an array of generators? So that's all I've got for the moment. Commissioner Thornton.
I appreciate everyone that came out and spoke tonight, technically and passionately, in both. And there was a lot that was said that was very technical. So if there are some thoughts from some of the speakers from experience, what also could be considered, I would suggest, is it okay, Bruce, that somebody just email you some thoughts? Oh, we got to do it. Give it to her. And we'll get it to you. But I did hear some technical this is nowhere in my arena, but I do recognize when people know. So if you would shoot us some thoughts that we may not be able to pick up or haven't it would be deeply appreciated.
Mr. Mayor, you said two things. One was, what is ACCGov's authority around pollutants that might be generated by an array of backup generators?
Yeah.
The other one was, can ACCGov require what? Sustainable energy?
Renewable energy for any business operation. That's part of our requirements.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, I think the other thing we need to consider, getting back to Commissioner Thornton's, in her district, can a utility come in by right and put up a data center without any action from us? I'm not sure. Now we need to maybe look into that. When our utility or power company can come in and do a data center and don't have to inform us. And that's sort of what happened with Commissioner Thornton's area. They did it by right. So I'm thinking, could there be a pattern moving forward? If they want to put a data center somewhere else in the community, can they just do it and we have no say so? And that may be a PSC question when they come next week.
And there's some state code about that. I know the attorney will be able to provide to us. Commissioner Myers.
Yeah, and well, if I'm just adding on to that, the also, the question about the transmission lines, the capacity for the transmission lines, just like we have to make sure we have, can we do any regulation that says you have to tell us how much energy, if the transmission, like an analysis of the transmission line, transmission lines carrying capacity, so that, like Commissioner Patrick is saying over there, like, if we don't want all the power to go over there to the data center and not be there to go to the hospital or to residents' homes to take care of their needs. So is there anything that we have the power to do or to ask for?
Commissioner Link.
To add to this list, we talk about following up and requiring them to report on things like their energy use. Could we require, it sounds like they would be self-reporting. Could we require an outside inspection to go in there and do that rather than a self-report? And also, could we require additional fees for these kind of operations or any industry that exceeds a certain level of water or power usage, additional fees paid into this community?
All right, I think we've got quite the list for the attorney's office. I appreciate everybody contributing, and certainly your emails continue to work. So if you have others, send them on via email. And I think we're going to move on to old and new business now.
Thanks, Bruce. Hey, if you can get that PowerPoint.
Yeah, she'll try to fix it.
All right, thank you, Bruce. Appreciate that. All right, moving forward to old and new business. We get public input first.
Can we take a break?
Would folks like to take a break now? We would normally take a break in about 20 minutes, but if you'd like to now, we certainly can. Commissioners like to take a break? Power through. All right, we're going to go ahead and get public input, and this is going to be on old and new business, so that's item 1 and 11 through 20. Item 1 and 11 through 20, now is that time. And same rules, public input apply, 3-minute opportunity, step on up and form a line. All right, no public input on old or new business? All right, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Demetrius Jordan, Executive Director of Athens Land Trust. I'm here regarding the recommendation to recapture $125,000 in ARPA affordable housing funds that were awarded to build 10 permanently affordable homes in Athens. So let me begin with this. Athens Land Trust gets the job done. We've done it before, and we'll do it again. This ARPA award was $2.75 million to build 10 homes. 5 are complete. 5 families are living in them today. 5 mortgages have replaced rent payments. 5 households are building equity instead of instability. Now, 5 more homes are underway on Hawthorne Extension. Clearing and grading began in January this year. Construction is moving forward. So the question we've heard, and it's a fair one, is this: can Athens Land Trust meet the federal deadline of December 31st, 2026 and fully expend the remaining balance? And the answer is yes, and the proof is already in front of you. In 2025, we launched new construction in January. We built 5 homes in parallel. We completed them in the fall, and they were sold before the end of the year. 5 bills, roughly 10 months, doing staff transitions in a volatile construction market. And we did it. Our timeline now projects 3 homes completed by April 30th, 2026, 2 more by August 31st, 2026. And that would place us months ahead of the federal deadline. The plan is clear, the capacity is proven, and the execution is underway. A $125,000 recapture at this stage does not reduce risk, it introduces it. In today's construction environment, $125,000 is not surplus. It represents framing, electrical, plumbing, roofing, windows, and the staffing capacity required to manage multiple bills and federal compliance. So pulling back funding now forces unnecessary trade-offs. It slows momentum, it tightens the margins, and it weakens our ability to execute efficiently.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Is there any other speaker for old or new business? Again, item 1 and items 11 through 20. All right, we'll move to discussion. Commissioner Link, you asked that item 1 be removed from the consent agenda for conversation.
Yeah, mostly because I just want to say thanks to Gavin for pulling off another really informative audit. And this is something that these capital projects, we've had conversations about how stuff falls behind. And I think that this audit has offers some information on what we can do to assure that our capital projects run efficiently. And, you know, it definitely points to the need for some staffing, some additional staffing and organization. So I think at budget time, when we have that conversation, this audit's going to come in handy. So I appreciate it, and I'm happy to see it go back on consent.
Any other input on number 1? All right, it is back on consent. All right, moving on. Item 11 was held over. This is relocation of the mill houses at 110 Puritan Lane and 1060 Macon Highway for future affordable housing use. Of course, staff did an analysis of those homes, the condition, the prospective cost of relocation. And I know commissioners had some extended questions just about the nature of that work. Commissioner Thornton, I know this was of particular interest to you. Is anything new tonight?
There will be something new after we meet with Bob. I think that Commissioner Davenport also called me because he had some questions. I still believe that maintaining historic homes, if we help one family, it's never too much. But after we went and visited, again, there's some other options that may bring down the cost. Since our last meeting, there was information of people interested in moving their mill houses on their property, which was not disclosed to us. So it's still there, Mayor, and maybe Commissioner Link wants to say something.
Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I visited those houses with a member of Athens Land Trust and a construction expert that Commissioner Thornton brought into the conversation, and it became apparent that those homes are actually like built around these original shotgun structures that could possibly be, date as far back as the 1840s, because that's when that mill was built. You can, inside the buildings, you can tell the original structure and the really wide, I don't know if it's heart pine or heart oak, but really wide, sturdy construction. And the construction expert, told us part of the complication of moving these houses is that they were built in phases and, all these additions tacked onto them. But if we were to just strip it down to the original, truly historic structures and just move those small shotgun structures, it could potentially bring the cost way, way down and have these function as affordable housing, truly affordable housing. They're effectively tiny homes. A lot of people used to live in tiny homes way back in the day. There's a lot of history at that mill. It was originally called Pioneer Mill, and it was built to make paper for the Athens Banner, the newspaper here in town. Apparently they shipped the pulp upriver from Greene County, where there was a mill that milled lumber, and that mill is now underwater, under Lake Oconee. But there's a lot, I went down the rabbit hole, and there's a lot of interesting history associated with that mill that's no longer there. And if we can save a couple of those structures and assure that that story can continue to be told, even if they're moved somewhere else, that I think, we'd be doing a great service to the community.
Thanks, Commissioners. I very much share your interest in extending the opportunity for housing to as many families as possible. One of the things that I do want us to keep in mind as we move toward the voting meeting and we look at some other options is how can we house as many families as possible? What I want to make sure is that if we're going to spend $1 million on a project, that be well-spent funds rather than funds that are just limited in opportunity. So we'll have some more conversations over the next couple of weeks. Commissioner Davenport.
So these homes, and this is what I was calling Thornton for, I'll wait till your voice gets better. So we're moving these homes because there's a developer who wants to put housing there. Are we still holding them up, or are they, okay?
The development there has been approved by this body.
But are we holding up construction?
He's run into some complications.
Okay.
So he's had to push back the move. So what I'll do, I try to call them every week just to see where they are. Okay. And so now it doesn't look like until maybe April, maybe June.
Okay.
But Kelly, I'm going to differ with you a little bit. We keep trying to do this big thing, and we're not getting it done. We're not getting it done, Kelly. We got money in that strike fund that's been there since 2023. So if we can help 2 families, after I saw that lady leaving that shelter with those 2 kids, God may not want us to help everybody at one time, but if the ones that we can help, and we have the ability to help them, shame on us if we don't.
No, I agree, Commissioner. We do have the ability to help some folks, but
don't say but.
My desire is that if we can help 4 families with the same money, let's help 4 families rather than 2. So, all right, we're going to move on. 12 is the Land Bank Authority appointment, so you'll get that list next week. 13 is the ARPA funding recapture. We've been through a couple of cycles of this, of course. There are some activities that are no longer feasible. We, of course, Mr. Jordan noted, have this statutory deadline provided to us by the federal government where all the ARPA funds have to be actually spent sort of on the ground by the end of this calendar year. So we've been in regular contact through largely HCD and for a couple of programs, the Economic Development Department, sort of around ensuring that we meet that deadline. I've got a couple interests. I'll start with Commissioner Myers.
All right. Yeah, this is quite a hearty agenda item, and it really outlines how we have diversified how we spent the ARPA money. And there's a lot in here that shows how well we've spent it, but there is this money now here that we need to make sure that is used by the time at the end of this year when it has to be spent. So, I'm thankful to staff for doing the complex work that's had to be done to put this forward, this agenda item. The one thing that I am would like to see adjusted is the money for the land trust. I reviewed the other expenditures that are not up to par. It's not really clear to me in all of those cases how if everything would get done any more efficiently and productively than it already has been done. But in this case, there's a house to be built, there's nails and siding and roofing, and according to the timeline, this should be done by the end of August, which would still give us, if there was, for example, any money that was left over, we would know it by then, and we'd have this other house finished. So I would hope my colleagues would support the Land Trust's desire to not have that money recaptured. I do want to ask something about the expenditure targets, because there's a lot that, we have this it seems like just yesterday we were making this plan for recapturing, and it would be really far off when we got to the 75%. But here we are in January 1st, and for contracts executed in 2023, they're supposed to have 75%, and the ones executed last year, 24, it's 50% now, and then 75% by July 1st. And I do have a question. I'm okay with the rest of the staff recommendations, but where do we deal with the remaining 25%? Since we have a significant, we have a lot of organizations that have used their money real well, so let me make that clear, okay? But there are the other ones who have not, and what are we, between July 1st, they supposedly have 6 more months to spend the 25%, but when are we going to stop and say, or like on October 1st, are we going to say, hey, listen, you're not there, we need that money back so we can use it for something else before it goes away? Do we have any kind of plan on that?
I don't think, and of course, this was all adopted way before I was here,
Right.
but I don't think that there's any guidance, but I'll verify that in the policies that look past that 75%.
Yeah.
Because it's really just kind of a check-in saying, hey, there's a pretty good chance that it'll get done in that remaining 6-month time frame. And I don't think Melinda, you are here. So I don't know if we've talked at all about kind of further, because I don't think the policy actually
Yeah,
takes
because
us
there's
there,
some,
so.
there's an organization that's only used 8% rather than 50%, so,
We're actually at a point now where rather than doing the 6-month, you're probably going to hear back from us in 3 months.
Okay.
And then you'll hear back from us in 6 months. Then you'll hear back from us in 9 months.
Okay.
So what we're doing is a cost analysis based on current expenditures to date. what we think they can expend, and we'll continue to do that. So in March, we're going to do another evaluation and say, okay, based on the past 3 months, we're still seeing the same expenditure rate. We're going to recommend that you recapture this amount and allow them to finish using this because this is what they can obviously spend. And that's where we came up with the numbers we have right now, is
Right.
we're basing on what we've seen so far, including the development of houses that have already come online, what money was used to do that, where they are at their expenditure rate, and that's why we're making recommendations for recapture at this point. But again, we will come back, instead of doing every 6 months at this point, we understand the nature
Okay.
of emergency, so you'll see us every 3 months.
And it's pretty likely, I would assume, that if any dollars, even at that point, are recaptured, we're still going to anticipate recommending reallocating them into the kinds of programs you
Oh,
see
yeah.
here, because the window gets really, really tight to where you're left with just kind of open sort of contracts that we can add money to, things like the paving contract, that kind of stuff. So that probably will not change as it goes along.
And since I'll finish it up and then don't have any other questions. So like when we're moving it to the paving contract, that enables us to use it for the paving this year and take the money that we kind of said, we take the general fund money and put it back in
Correct.
the general fund.
Some of it could be
Okay.
spent immediately, the elevator, for example. Others would be, in effect, you're replacing general fund dollars with these dollars, spending them first, and then you have the general
Okay.
fund dollars, so you can expand what you can do. So, yeah.
Commissioner Thornton.
I am more confused now than ever. First of all, this was before you came here, Bob, so I can't blame you. But I also am going to support that we do not recapture the land trust money. If anybody remembers back, it was a whole year before their contracts were even, so they should get a whole year extra. So we're penalizing them for something that we didn't get done, for whatever the reason. So, and I did appreciate Demetrius's points. Construction has been difficult for private developers. So, it's going to be just as hard. They've already demonstrated what they could do. And you didn't get it. But again, I think that year that it took for them to even get their first contract, their first check, should be taken into consideration. Now, the part that I don't get is, and I don't even know, maybe Melinda can answer this. We're not recapturing the Athens, no, it's the bank, First American, right?
Right.
In the GICH meetings, several times, Jeff has talked about how hard it is to get people. So but a lot of their businesses come from the land trust, right?
Some of them do. So some of if you look at their action plan that's part of the attachment, everybody had to turn in an action plan to explain how they plan to use the money and get back on track. The First American Bank and Trust actually, after we did this agenda, actually submitted a pretty substantial reimbursement for some down payment that they have completed. And they gave us a pretty solid action plan that is tied to some of our ARPA housing developments, but others are tied, they're in processing right now, they just haven't executed. So, but again, they would be in that 3-month review as well, coming up in March. We're going to look at everybody again in March, and we've already informed FABT if at that time they're still behind significantly, then we're going to have to likely put a number up in front of you to consider for recapture.
Well, I only can go by what I heard at a GICH meeting, how difficult it was to find people who were qualified for the loan.
Well, it was originally, but once we started making some changes to the scope, once we allowed them to increase the amount that they could do, once we allowed them to increase the AMI percent or the LMI percentage, they started being able to bring in more applicants.
Okay.
So more people came online as eligible. So those more restrictive requirements were removed, and it really did open up the floodgates a little bit.
And it's even, so then I even more support the land trust, because if they found a way to get those mortgages out there.
Well, let me try to explain where we came up with that number. So if you notice, it did get reduced because they did submit some late expenditures that were eligible that we gave them credit for. But we did provide an advance payment, and they still have not cleared the advance payment. And that advance payment that still hasn't been cleared is land trust.
Okay.
Land trust. It's approximately equivalent to the amount that we're recommending for recapture, because they have to come up with $125,000 of expenditures to provide us to support that advance payment we gave them, and that's going into the 5 houses on Hawthorne. So that's where that number came from. It's not that they can't build the houses. They absolutely can, and we want them to. We just had to look at it and go, okay, you're sitting on a balance of this amount. You still have all this other money, and you have got to get the 5 houses built, and we just don't want $100,000 to $125,000 floating so close to the end of time that it's difficult to get that expended somewhere else if it's eventually recaptured. So that's the rationale. It's not that we don't want the houses to be built. We just had to look at it from a cost analysis expenditure rate. This is where they are at this point.
Well, I'm still going to support that.
No, I mean, that absolutely.
Capture.
Yeah.
Demetrius was not here when the money was delayed, so we need to give him the benefit of the doubt.
I think I had Commissioner Johnson and then Commissioners Fisher and Link.
My question was answered.
Okay.
My question was answered, thank you.
Perfect. Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, let us sit down. Yeah.
I'm right here.
Yeah, okay. So, on the qualifying piece, you mentioned that we changed it. What's the AMI now? What's the, how?
Oh, they're allowed to go up to 120% Q, in the Q, no, I'm sorry. They're allowed to go up to $45,000 dollars for down payment assistance. And yeah, they're allowed to go up to 120% within the QCT, qualified census tracts.
Okay. And that based on the number, I mean.
For ARPA, we had to
use.
For example. For ARPA funding, you have to use either the federal poverty rate or you use the HUD limit.
Okay.
The HUD limit gives you more flexibility, so that's the one we use.
So 120.
120% based on HUD's determination of income.
All right, thank you. Because we're trying to find, Commissioner Taylor and I are trying to find people that may, working folks who can maybe qualify that. They may not know this.
That would be great. Absolutely.
They may not know this, so we need to get
absolutely. That would be wonderful.
We need to get that word out. Now, let me ask you this, though, but it has to be based on, it's the number of people where you are, though, right? Well,
it has to be within those qualifying census tracts, and there are several of those that qualify.
Okay, all right, okay. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Ms. Bagby, I'm sorry, we don't have any further public input tonight. Commissioner Link?
Y'all looking for people, you're supposed to advertise it in a legal organ and let the people that feel like they need it apply for the money.
Commissioner Link has the floor. Appreciate you being here, darling.
Find out what Athens is doing with all the money they're hiding from poor people, blacks in particular.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, I'll be writing a CDO to assure that the land trust gets its full allocation, if not more. I'm looking at the.
You actually can reject.
I can just reject it.
You don't have to do a CDO.
Just reject it.
That's one of your options.
Okay, whatever I need to do. I'm looking at that road paving reallocation. I mean, would we have to indicate what reallocation it would come from?
It's considered revenue replacement, so it can just go into that pot to replace the capital funds that have already been invested.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I definitely want to make sure that they get that full allocation. I have absolute confidence that they're going to make those houses, and it's a sweet little neighborhood over there on Hawthorne Extension, and I'm looking forward to more folks moving into it.
Yep.
And it is something just to think about on the reallocation if ultimately the decision is, because these are, you've got in your policy when we hit this threshold, we've got to come back with recommendations. Those recommendations are there for your consideration. You can obviously take what action you wish with those, both on the side of recapture and reallocation. So that's the other piece of this, is to keep in mind, if ultimately there's a desire not to recapture that 125,000, we'll need to lower the reallocation from someplace, whether that comes out of one of the other buckets that we've recommended. Probably would recommend it come out of either the paving or the dirt road program, because the elevator is kind of a fixed price. And you don't do that now, it's just something to think about.
Is there the possibility of increasing that allocation if, they have an ongoing project that's, a project that's, literally under construction and dirt's moving? Like, is there still a possibility to increase an allocation to an entity like the Land Trust that has a project that's underway that
The potential
could
is
use
there,
more
but we wouldn't
funds?
recommend it, because if we're recommending for reallocation, then we don't have the confidence that if you added money, they would be able to expend. And I would be afraid that we'd be back in front of you in 3 months or 6 months recommending recapture of the money that was reallocated.
Okay.
So we're trying to be extremely strategic to ensure that every dime of this gets spent in an eligible way for activities that are needed to support the community in all venues, whether it be the ones that we're managing or ones that other departments are managing.
Thanks.
Commissioner Thornton.
I don't know if this is a question for Judd or Bob or even the mayor. I think Commissioner Link kind of headed in this direction, but is there a possibility, is it a possibility that a commissioner or commissioners could do a CDO for any of the outstanding monies that are out there, or do we have to wait for staff's recommendations?
And by that, I guess, just to clarify, you mean beyond these items that we're recommending, or that are up for their review, if you will?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, all of those have current contracts, so you've already contractually obligated. So if there was a desire to reclaim any of those dollars under those contractual obligations, I
The
think
ones that don't look like they're going to make it to the finish line. That's what I'm talking about.
that are not on this list?
No.
Or,
On this list.
okay.
Yeah,
No,
no.
you don't need to, no, again, as Melinda said, these are just recommendations. So for those 4 items, for those that we've identified in there, y'all can choose to accept those recommendations. You could alter those recommendations. You can reallocate in slightly different ways. That's a fairly difficult, as Melinda's indicated. That window is very narrow on the reallocation piece of it. But yeah, those are recommendations. You don't need a CDO to do that. You would just make it a part of your motion that you actually do, because there's options in here to accept them, to reject them, to modify them. So all of those are available.
Thank you.
Question I just want to make sure is clear in everybody's mind. If we get to the very end of this calendar year, do we have the opportunity, Bob and Judd, should there be some unexpended funds, to convert those to revenue recapture, revenue replacement?
It's got to be spent. I'll check that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, because you can recapture, but then it needs to be spent on a governmental purpose, is how the Treasury guidance indicates. So, which is in effect what we're trying to do with these. I would strongly suggest that you view that sort of 3-month, that last 3-month check-in as kind of the end-all, because that gives 3 months to go ahead and ensure that it's, say, for example, you put it in the paving program, that we know that it's been spent. I would kind of view that as your absolute cutoff.
That's helpful, and I think for all of us to know, while December is the statutory deadline for the federal government, to effectively spend the money, should a program have $50,000 of unexpended funds, it's really September when we need to be able to then direct those funds to paving, purchase of a vehicle, parts, whatever those things would be that we would end up funding internally.
Yeah, it also helps ensure that our, all of the compliance documents that we require, the receipts, the invoice, all of those have been received in that 3-month time frame as well. So I think, and the good thing is we're getting down to dollars where I think that's manageable.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mel. All right, item 14 are Memorial Park improvements, which is a SPLOST 2020 project. And you see some lovely illustrations of the forthcoming improvements over there and a timeline associated with that in the agenda report. Any input on this one? Or everybody okay with consent? All right, 14 is going to consent. Thank you all. 15 is an intergovernmental agreement with the Development Authority to provide the green business allocation. We, of course, have been capturing the increases in revenue from our utilities, and so those now are able to be spent on some great programs, but some of those programs have to be done through an authority just based on the way that Georgia law works. And so you see the potential benefits to businesses outlined in the agenda report. Input on this one?
Consent? Can we put on consent?
Consent, good, everybody?
Yeah.
All right. 15 is going to be consent as well. All right. 16 is calendar year 2026 pavement maintenance, the contract award. And of course, we have an award in hand. Any input on this one?
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Link.
So, I was just looking at the list of streets, and are we still following that complete streets policy where there's like an analysis of a street to see if it could undergo a road diet or a right sizing or, additional striping that might help with traffic calming? Is
Yeah,
that?
so far as I know, that policy is still, and I don't know if there's anybody here, and I will absolutely verify that, and they can give you kind of a quick update on it as well.
Yeah,
But
'cause
since
it
that
was-
policy's in place.
Yeah, I mean, it was through this repaving and that standing policy that Rock Springs got some traffic calming and some bike lanes. So I just want to make sure that that's still going on, and if anybody has a street in their district that you think probably could use traffic calming, we might want to.
And Ronnie Kentrebe from Transportation Public Works is here.
Hey.
So yes, good evening. Yes, we are, and we have looked at all these streets with our team and also shared with Athens in Motion Commission. Unfortunately, there is not roads that qualify for an official roadway diet, but we are definitely looking at enhancing markings in the roadways.
And I think and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's important in terms of timing. So if you remember, there's a window at which we bring forward the projects that are proposed for paving, and then there's the contract, and we're at the contract. So it's in between those that we're actually doing kind of that assessment, because the contractor has to know what's being incorporated into those as well. So.
Okay.
Correct.
Awesome. All right, I'm happy to see this go on consent. Just wanted to make sure that was out there.
Yeah, and I have to acknowledge that, again, thank you all for $8.8 million to go into paving. This is a substantial investment that you're making in paving, and it isn't just this 8.8, there's some other money that's going into it as well, so certainly want to acknowledge that.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes, I would like to keep it off consent. I do have some questions, and I was going through the budget, and I did notice that there is an FY25 expenditure for 1.908645, and that was, I believe it was on the March 4th agenda meeting minutes for 2025, that expenditure for paving, that it was included. And so I was curious, did paving not get completed last year? How was this amount and the exact amount carried forward to this fiscal year?
Manager Cowell or Ronnie or Steve, if you got post-mortem on the last round of paving.
Post-mortem.
We can respond back with more accurate numbers, but historically what happens is there is money left over typically. Some years we may have a change order to ask for more money for some remaining balance for materials that used additional work was needed to complete the work. We've been lucky enough to have some money left over from both contracts, the year before, this one, 25 and 24, and therefore there's some money coming in from those programs.
But we paved all of the roads that were on the list.
Yes, we have paved all the roads, and if there was something that was not paved, it was included in this year, but I don't recall a road was pushed from last year into this year.
Because I think that was the real question, making sure we were getting all the roads on the list paved. We were.
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
yes,
All the
sorry
roads
if I missed that.
paved, and I was surprised that the exact figure was carried forward. And that made me think that some roads weren't paved, so thank you, Bob.
Sure.
I mean, Manager Cowell.
It's okay.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Thornton?
And I guess my question kind of fits into there. know we had a list of roads. So as we move forward, we will still get a list of roads that still, and I'm assuming these are not damaged roads, these are the dirt roads. Am I right?
These are not dirt roads, these are roads that have rated poorly and have dropped below a threshold to qualify for
So where's the
paving.
dirt road thing?
Yeah, there's a separate program, and you all
Okay.
may remember a month or two ago, you approved a contract that was for the design on one of those dirt roads. One of the reasons why we're suggesting the recapture, any recaptured ARPA dollars go into that program is because that program has depleted its funding, so we need
Okay.
more money for pay. But there are
Okay.
two separate programs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a proposed list of roads that's at the end of that agenda item, so you can see them.
And I think it was Commissioner Davenport that addressed this.
GOC.
Okay, all right, I'm good.
And I think it also is, a part of the question too, is it is important to recognize that, the goal is, of course, to improve those pavement condition ratings, if you will. But periodically, we will reevaluate those because roads will continue to deteriorate and keep adding to those. So the more money we can spend on it, the better that number gets. But it probably is not a program that's ever ending. It just hopefully gets a little bit tighter. So.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Item 17, as mentioned earlier, is still in the advertising phase, so that won't be on our March agenda.
Yeah, and just for clarification, there were no bids received, and so we're actually having to rebid it. So that's why we didn't want to just hold it over for one meeting. So,
Commissioner Thornton.
Mayor, did we was Commissioner Johnson's request to pull? Are you okay with it staying? I don't know.
Yes, I did just want to just review the budget that they proposed, and it's
So
a
you
big
still want to
document.
pull it?
Keep
Just keep
seven-
it off of
Keep 16 on
consent,
discussion.
please.
Okay. And then 18 is following up on a great work session that we had with members of GICH. And so this is the resolution that would go through the formal process of having the Planning Commission review ordinance language that we would then subsequently affirm.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Thornton.
I think we talked about this, and I did get a call today. I did get a call. Let's pull this, please. I'm going to pull it. Oh, shoot. I don't want to discuss this next month. Kelly, explain to me again what your definition of a resolution is.
So the necessary process for creating an ordinance that's part of our zoning code is to have that first reviewed by the Planning Commission and then by the County Commission. So this resolution instructs the Planning Commission to work with staff to compose that code that then ultimately has to be approved by this body. Commissioner Myers.
Yeah, and to clarify that might help you. I mean, I'm looking at section 1 of the resolution, where after all the whereases, it just says, "The commission recommends and requests that the Athens-Clarke County Planning Commission review the recommendations," that came from your committee, "of the GICH committee and develop ordinance modifications pursuant to these concepts for consideration of the mayor." It doesn't say pursuant to these concepts for adoption, like we have to adopt them. So, I mean, this just gives us the details to discuss them and decide whether or not we want to pass them as laws. So that's.
And if Allison was here, she would have the same question I'm having, because we
Yes.
get confused about what we adopt and what we do. And I don't want anybody to think we're doing anything, because that wasn't the intent of the workshop. It was, we knew when we did that training, there were gaps. There were things that, have negative impact. So I don't want anybody, and I hope this person who called me today is listening. This is not an action move, right? This is not action.
Yeah, this is start the process.
That's right.
Is what this is. Yeah.
It is action move, but, okay.
It starts the process.
It starts the process.
But the end of
We can
it,
reject.
if you want to kind of think about this even on a timeline, we would say, hey, Planning Commission, work with the Planning Department to come up with some language. Invariably, that's going to take a few months, given the scale and complexity of the work, and the preceding work around future land use, really. And then they would probably review these, I would imagine, a couple of cycles. I'm looking at Bruce, maybe looking for some confirmation, given, again, the variety of these 6 things. And that probably would come to this body summertime-ish.
Can you put a date on that?
I can't put a date on that, but I'm just saying that this isn't a 2-month turnaround kind of a thing.
And I think part of the reason you might not want to put a date specific, because the process includes, by design, a fair amount of community engagement, community involvement piece of it, just as you saw with the data center piece. So we need to make certain that that's given its due regard.
I don't know if under the zoning ordinance we can put a date specific.
Okay.
Well, that's a great point, Jed. There you go.
And, it's also possible, and we won't know this until it gets into it, because there are several of these. It's also possible the Plan Commission may want and recommend moving 1 or 2 of them forward ahead of others, so that it may take a very long time to get all 6 into a point. So they may look at it differently.
And we took that in consideration with our committee when we met. And there's a group that is working on the things that may have a negative, unexpected consequence. And I do believe Bruce is on that committee. I'll just be real. I'm gonna just say, this don't need to be. This don't need to be taking years and years and years. Okay.
Yeah.
If we're going to do it, do it. And if we're not, just say so. But we have put things on resolutions and we forget about them and they fade away. And the people that I represent are the ones that are disenfranchised or displaced. So I'm not really up for.
Well, I have a feeling that we'll be able to actually craft this probably faster. I'll use the data centers as an example. We were able to craft that, staff was able to craft that pretty quickly. You all have said needs more work. So, I think we can actually get it in front of you pretty timely, because it is timely. It really is trying to actually address these. I think actually, if there's a chance for it to slow down or bog down, it's going to be when you all start your deliberation, because I do think these, as has been mentioned, I do think these are going to generate interest for and against. So I think the work that we have to craft these will be pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Davenport.
I have some concerns about the ADUs. Some of the recommendation, but that the 5 people did at GICH. I just need to process it a little bit more.
Well, that's what he's saying. They're going to process it more.
Yeah, and we can have, I'd be glad to have a discussion subsequent to this meeting.
All right.
Yeah, so my intent was for this to stay on discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. I'm good.
All right, item 19 is kind of pursuant to conversation that many of us have had about a transition in kind of the zoning model for the mall property. And this would be a resolution that has some component pieces specifically called out around a new special district overlay. This is in many ways akin to what we did on the former varsity property that's now under construction, where rather than planned development, where where every sidewalk, every window, and every door will be. Instead, there are some more general parameters that are developed. So this is sort of like the last one. This is the beginning of this process.
Consent.
Commissioner Johnson.
Consent. I welcome
All right.
consent.
19 is on consent. All right. And then 20 is title only. This is replacement of a culvert headwall. And
What was 20?
20 is replacement of a culvert headwall. And I don't know if Manager Cowell, you can.
Yeah, it's actually just a contract. So it's just
contract for service, but we can't put it on consent if we don't have the bid and award ready.
Yeah, and that's why. That's
all right. So
I didn't see number 20 on the.
it's because it's title only. We're still waiting for additional. Yeah. It will be. You will have all the information before you're asked to act on it.
So, Mayor, we're 18, 19, and 20. Well, 20's not on consent, so 18 and 19 are consent, right?
18 is on discussion, 19 is on consent.
Patrick, if I change my mind, why are you doing that?
Whatever makes you happy, put it on consent.
Consent. If I change, you change.
All right, I do need
Executive session.
a motion to adjourn the agenda setting and enter executive session for discussion of, I want to get the language right. Enter into executive session for discussion under attorney-client conference to discuss threatened or pending litigation. All right, got a motion from Commissioner Culpepper, second from Commissioner Fisher. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, and can I get a motion now for adjournment of that session upon its conclusion?
So moved.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Taylor, second from Commissioner Davenport. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are now in executive session. Thanks, everybody, for coming tonight.
Mr. Mayor, we're going to need a few minutes to get this set up. We got to let the screen down.